Hi everyone, and welcome to this Pi Chat Live. I'm the Pi's editor, Beth Kennedy, and I am here at the Language Cert offices in Knightsbridge, London. Very nice it is too, with Kathy Jones, who is Language Cert's Assessment Development Specialist. And today we're going to be talking about the transferable skills you can get from language learning. I think we can all agree that language learning is an incredibly important skill. Then we're going to be basing it specifically around English language learning, but there's obviously lots to learn about other language learning too. So a few points of housekeeping before we head straight into our questions. We will be taking questions from you, our audience. So from about 5 minutes towards the end of this half-hour chat, if you do have a question that you'd like to ask Kathy, you can pop it into the question panel at the right side of your screen. There's a little tab there, so you can click that, pop in your question, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. So I think that's it in terms of housekeeping. Just to say as well, we are recording this, and everyone who has registered will be sent a recording as well, so you can watch this back at your leisure. So Kathy, let's get straight into these questions. Hi. Well, it's so lovely to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me. So first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself and your role at Language Cert.
Okay, so as you said in your very kind introduction, I'm the Assessment Development Specialist at Language Cert. I've been there for 3 years, and I've been working on the development of a qualification for an English language qualification for higher education admission. Before that, I've spent my whole career working in teaching, learning, and predominantly assessment. I used to worry that assessment was more like the dry end of teaching and learning. So you'd see teachers really doing these fabulous creative things with the learners, and then the assessment being a kind of final hurdle at the end. But increasingly, I'm finding, especially in my role at Language Cert, that actually assessment can be a very creative and innovative space. I'm a really strong believer in developing an assessment puts you in a position of real privilege. I think it enables you to affect some kind of change when it's done responsibly. So I see a kind of moral and ethical responsibility around creating an assessment. Why do people take assessments? People take assessments, they pay to take assessments, they take assessments of all kinds because they want to move to the next thing, to the next stage. So in that sense, you can see assessment as being linked directly to opportunity. And what's opportunity? Opportunity is hope. So I don't think it's overstretching it to see this kind of transformation. And if I'm the guardian of the assessment, I'm the guardian of every single test taker's access to this kind of transformation and opportunity and hope.
I think it's interesting because you speak French yourself,
I
don't you?
do.
So do you have to take similar tests yourself? So how does that shape?
Exactly that. So so what we're going to be chatting about today are those kind of transferable skills that I think are engendered just by definition of being a language learner. Okay, but I said there are all sorts of different types of assessment you can take. What I am very keen to do in the role I have at the moment at Language Cert is to create something that is more than a kind of end hurdle. So at its most basic, what is an English language assessment for entry to a higher education institution? It's something that says, yep, your English language is X level, it's good enough, away you go. And ideally it's something that's cheap, quick, easy. Okay, that's at its most basic level. Is there the possibility for it to be something more than that? Not just a one-stop shop, quick vocabulary test, yep, away you go. Is there a possibility, by thinking about the kind of skills we're going to be talking about today, to create something that really garners all the benefit of being on this language learning journey and bringing out some of those qualities and strengths that people have through learning a language? And how might those be transferable to academic success? So this is a test. The test that I've been working on is a test of English proficiency for access to academia. okay, in the academic domain, first and foremost, it has to be a robust test of the academic domain. But I'm interested in whether there are transferable, overlapping skills that lie at that intersection between the academic domain, between professional excellence. There's lots of talk, so much in the news about college readiness and how do we prepare people to be ready for what they're going to do. And also well-being. How do you do those and look after yourself, your friends, your acquaintances, your social well-being? I think all of these things come into play, and there's a really interesting kind of nexus where these things meet.
Yeah, so we just had a question through. We just asked you to repeat what you just said. So the bit that you were just saying.
Repeat the bit I've just said.
Yeah,
sorry.
Sorry, just did something 10 seconds ago. Yeah, I think we had a small thing pop up. So okay, or we can just move on to the next question if that's better for
you. I can repeat what I just said in terms of I'm really interested in where academic excellence meets like professional career readiness meets personal well-being. And I think in that heart, there are some transferable skills like resilience, for example, that can be nurtured and fostered through a high quality test of academic English that will it's not set the test taker on the right path. The test taker, by definition of being a language learner, is on this journey, and they already have some of these skills, but there is a way to enhance them and to foster them, I think, through the content and through the way that the test is developed.
And so while we're talking about test development, so you've been working on this new test, so we're going to talk about that just now. I mean, the obvious question is, why is there a need? Is there a need for another admissions test, and why are you launching this new test? And sorry, while we have this question, we've got a poll up for our audience. So the question that we are asking you is, do you agree that tests should prepare international students for their everyday non-academic life? And you've got a few different options up there for you. So Kathy, as we were saying.
Yeah, so I talked about the moral and ethical responsibility of a test developer. Why does the world need a new test? You only need a new test if there is a really valid purpose for introducing yet another test. Too much proliferation of testing, not good, confusing for test takers. You're not adding a benefit. As part of working for Language Cert already had, before I joined 3 years ago, they already had an established suite of English language qualifications, recognised, approved by the UK Home Office, in general English, workplace English, nothing specifically for academic English. So why isn't a test of general English good enough for it to be a test of academic English, you might ask? There are nuanced differences in language that actually, the nuanced differences that mean that a test of academic English needs to be slightly different to a test of general English, okay? And by offering more choice, you're widening up the pool, but what are often needed to be is something different. So we have developed a test construct around something really important that I think is a kind of empowering, and it embodies this idea of transformation, and not just the language learning itself being a transformation, but actually that progression through setting that learner up to progress through is also transformative. And it's set around the definition of survive, thrive, and flourish. And I can unpack a little bit what that means in terms of this test. So the idea of surviving is that English, you may call it general English, but it's those English skills that you actually need to be able to get on in a campus environment. Okay, so and in a campus or in an academic, in a university environment is really important to this. It's not general English like for the workplace or general English for interacting in a shop. It's all 4 skills in the Language Cert academic test are firmly grounded in the academic domain. But the language you need to survive is perhaps the language for socializing, perhaps the language for going to the accommodation office and, you know, saying your Wi-Fi doesn't work, or it's that kind of thing. Exactly. Then another really important part of that is, if you think about mental health and personal well-being, you know, going to university is a daunting, overwhelming experience, and transformative, exciting, lots of good things too. But typically in Australia, US, UK, mental health support services are also all offered through the medium of English. So if this academic test purely focused on the skills that you need to interact in a tutorial, to ask questions, to write an academic essay, you are missing something. You are doing those students a disservice, because academic life certainly does involve being in tutorials, and it certainly does involve writing essays. But to be successful and to replicate what is going to happen in the real world, and to ensure that language learners are preparing at the right level to be able to survive in that academic domain, okay, then I think it's absolutely imperative to include some of that language that they will need in order to access those kind of services, healthcare, accommodation, technical, study skills. To incorporate those in the model is absolutely key.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because as well, if it's only focusing on the academic side of things, does that also say to students, well, that's the only thing that you're here for? Yeah. Of course, the academic experience is so much more than just going to lectures, and it's an important part, don't get me wrong, but it's one aspect.
Academic success, I think, if we think about those skills that lie at that intersection, it's first and foremost a test of academic skills. Have to be even more precise than that. First and foremost, it's a test of English language proficiency to be able to access academic skills and learning. So you are applying to get your place on your degree course. You need to be able to have the right level of language to access all that brilliant learning that is going to be made available to you. But in order to access all of that in a happy and healthy and sustainable way, then you also need some wraparound language skills as well. So I would say that when I'm describing what I mean by general academic English, I'm not talking about high, rare frequency, discipline-specific English, because that's something that will come. Our test-taking cohort are not at university yet. We're testing their aptitude in terms of the English language to be able to access that. We are encouraging learners to develop some of that core vocabulary that is discipline agnostic, that's going to work across any different subject that you might study, but also to include some of that general English. So why the world needs another test is because we are thinking creatively about how we can, as part of language cert, which in itself sits as part of people cert, who have a history of offering professional and business qualifications, how we might be able to do something that is slightly different, certainly more than just that down and dirty hurdle to get into college. And by embarking on this journey with language cert, you are effectively starting, building on those skills that you have already engendered by being a language learner, but in a way that is going to foster them, make you more aware of them. Okay? There's something I really like. It's like, you cannot be what you cannot see. Right? So language cert, global organization. We have a global candidature, and this ties to this moral and ethical responsibility for what I do, a significant thing is cultural capital. So in that test construct, we have to be so careful that we're not including anything that relies on any assumed knowledge of what might happen to that test taker when they get to university. What might, we need to be sure that we're not including anything that is based on some unspoken rules that you or I or somebody else, or we may not be party to, being from a different background or a different culture.
Sure.
We need to absolutely make sure that those aren't barriers to accessing that learning. And those kind of issues I'm really interested in. And the way we approach those, and we take a research-informed line on how we ensure that our test isn't doing that, are really, really, really important as part of that test development process.
We've actually got a poll from you before I head on to the next question. So this is a highly interactive Pie Chat Live, which is fantastic. So to our audience, do you agree that the process of learning a language gives someone more than communicative ability? So while you're answering that, I'm going to drill down into this because we have touched on this already, Kathy. But what do you mean by extra linguistic skills acquired through the process of language learning? What kinds of things do we mean by that?
So the kind of skills that I'm thinking about are things like resilience. So learning a language is arguably a lifelong commitment. We're all language learners, even if we're not second language learners. We're all language learners, and we can continue to build. Language changes, we build our vocabulary. Quite overwhelming. Like the internationally recognized framework that our language cert exams and many others are aligned to is the Common European Framework of Reference. And those levels are huge. They are big, chunky bits of learning. To be able to take those on takes resilience, it takes willpower, it takes not feeling completely overwhelmed by the enormity of what you're taking on. Putting yourself into situations where you are required to speak and you don't understand. You have to be resilient, you have to persevere, you can't sort of, hold your hands up and go, oh. You have to keep trying. So I think resilience is one of those skills, and that is something that employers increasingly are looking for in the work,
especially post-pandemic.
Personal resilience is something that you can resilience is important in terms of your personal well-being, being more self-aware. Empathy. Learning a language is arguably a journey of self-discovery, definitely. Self-discovery, but also discovery of the other. So in my personal language learning journey, when I was studying French, what I learned about France also taught me what was unique about my own cultural identity. So it's revealing in what it tells you about yourself, as well as what it tells you about the other. And through learning about identity, I think you have a kind of increased empathy, empathetic. I absolutely love working for a Greek organization. Lots of my colleagues are Greek, but we're global, so there are people everywhere. So every day I'm kind of practicing this intercultural competence, and it's teaching me through language about my own culture, my own cultural identity, how I relate to other people, as well as how those others relate to me. So how that can trickle through into the test is something that I think it would be really helpful for us. It's really helpful for us to talk about. But in terms of content, there is a global focus across the content in the language cert exam, and I find the content that's most successful is the content that is kind of exploring some of these issues in themselves. So kind of opening up to language learners.
Yeah.
You know, here I am studying a language, here I am taking a test to access my next opportunity, and here is something that I am studying which is about the benefits of doing that.
Yeah.
How great is that?
It's wonderful. And the thing that I'm, hands up, I'm pretty terrible at learning languages, but whenever I have tried to learn, the thing that I've always enjoyed the most is when you learn those phrases that don't really translate exactly into another language, and it tells you so much about that culture, whichever language you're trying to learn.
There's some beautiful ones in Japanese.
Yeah,
for like
really
not
beautiful.
Being quite fun.
Or even, you know, German. I studied German at school, and it's very, very precise, but it tells you kind of a lot culturally about those different cultures as well, which I think is fantastic. So yes, very, very passionate about that. So we do have another poll for you, special treat. This is our final poll before we head on to our next question. Do you agree that critical thinking, resilience and empathy are essential for study and the workplace and wellbeing? So have a crack at that. So how do all these extra skills that we've mentioned, those key skills, not just for language learning, but for going out into the world now, how do they all fit together and what do they mean for a learner?
So I think that by taking this kind of approach, and I have to be absolutely, I think it's really important to be black and white here. The test that Language Cert are offering, this Language Cert academic test, the test is not measuring these skills. The test is not reporting on these skills. The test is fostering them.
Yeah.
By fostering them, you are enabling them. Okay. I personally think, I hate the term soft skills.
Yeah.
It makes it sound as though they're, you know, not important.
Yeah.
21st century skills always sounds quite dated.
Yeah.
I think these are skills for humanity.
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
A definition I like. These are what keep us humane. We have the, you know, the roar of AI in the background. Okay, but AI, generative AI, there's a lot of concern around, you know, academic integrity and generative AI. Just a tool. It's a chisel to the workman. It's data and information. It's not knowledge and skills. What we have, where I'm talking about these transferable skills, is we have kind of skills for humanity. So take an example like empathy. There's absolutely no way that a test of academic English is ever going to test your ability to empathize. And would it even be right to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. What you can start to think about is the importance of something, of a skill that maybe engenders it a little bit. And that skill for me is speaking. And for a long time now, I've been thinking about a kind of rise in oracy. And absolutely no coincidence that I think it's only actually today that the UK government reform, I honestly don't often have a lot of truck with new government, let's throw out the old curriculum in with the new. But I listened today because oracy was described as the golden thread through numeracy, literacy. And this is exactly how I've been feeling. Had this kind of gut feeling that as we negotiate the rise and the advent of AI in academia, oracy is going to become more and more important as a reliable and valid way to assess thinking skills, critical thinking skills. So you use your ChatGPT, you do your research, you have your chisel. How do you articulate that? How do you create an argument? How do you defend it in real time, like I'm doing with you now? How do you do that? And is oracy going to be something that's more prevalent? So I was super happy to hear oracy described as this kind of golden thread. And I think through oracy, you have greater empathy. Through speaking, you have a connection with the other. So the test, thinking about the test, and remember, this is like years back. So you're, by definition, test developers, you're working so far ahead.
Of course.
But speaking, communicative language competence is absolutely at the heart of the offer that we've put together for Language Cert Academic. And the test is conducted by a human interlocutor. You're not speaking to AI, you're speaking to a human in the way we are now. And that human can elicit the best performance from you according to a guided interlocutor framework. And there are different skills that are included in there, including a role play task, which is unique to what we do.
Yeah.
But what better way to promote empathy
Yeah.
than to put yourself as a learner into the situation in which you're in, that real world scenario,
Yeah.
into which you're going to find yourself,
Yeah.
and kind of work out how you kind of get around that. There's a presentation task, and which comes right at the end of the test, and the interlocutor has a frame. So by the time you've got to the end of the test, that interlocutor has a really good idea actually of your kind of level. So in a multi-level test, you're dealing with quite a wide ability range. So in order to elicit the absolute best, that interlocutor can ask questions to just probe a little bit.
Yeah.
Just start to see where that test taker is in terms of being able to defend an argument, verbal reasoning, critical thinking. And there you go. They're examples of the transferable skills. There's nothing on the certificate that's going to say, oh, and in terms of critical thinking, this person did this.
Yeah.
But by measuring those elements of English language proficiency, by putting them in the test, you're encouraging the cohort to practice those.
Yeah.
All of our learning and support materials are developed around the same test construct. So you're really highlighting them and giving that learner the best opportunity to enhance what they are naturally given by definition of being a language learner. So that's an example of just one aspect of it, and how it would translate through into something that is measurable.
I mean, I would love to spend more time on this because I find it completely fascinating. But I do have one more question before we open the floor to our audience. Remember, if you do have questions, pop them in the question tab and we will get to them. So how do you address these extra skills? I think you touched on this a bit already, but in the language test.
So it's just being really mindful that any test is an abstraction of reality.
Yeah.
Okay. You are sampling, you're taking a chunk out of the real world and trying to replicate in terms of situational authenticity and interactional authenticity what that test taker is going to need to do and at which levels, to be able to say, yep, okay, so we gave you a little trial at doing this in a test environment, and from that we extrapolate that in the real world you would be able to do some of these things at these kind of levels. Away you go. And that the fundamental of all good assessment, robust assessment, is that is fit for purpose and research informed. And we have an ongoing program of internal and external research to make sure that our tests are doing exactly those things that we want them to do. And that, for me, is one of the most exciting things about the job. How do you kind of make sure that your results and the impact is measurable and communicable, repeatable? Can't have something that just happens the once and go, hey, we've done it. You need to make sure that it's replicable over time. And we're working ahead. So there's so many things. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a postman, and I used to write letters and deliver them to all my teddies. Totally out of date. Slightly meaningless even to my kids. Letters, they're not. It's a sort of vintage charm to writing a letter now. But I used to make my stamps and stick them on. So what are the skills that our young people now are going to need as they embark on employability? So having being part of PeopleCert enables us to have these very strong links actually with qualifications that prepare certificate for the workplace, combined with certification of English language proficiency, is incredibly powerful. I like to sort of think of English language proficiency maybe as like a key ring. So if you think a qualification opens a door, there's the analogy. So you're getting access to a transformative experience, space, community, opportunity, hope. Think of your English language proficiency as a key ring. Okay. onto that keyring, you can hook anything. You can hook a multitude of qualifications. Never think of your English language proficiency as just something that you do to get out of the way so you can get into university and get on with what you want to do. Because I think that way disaster lies. That way you get, people who've taken a test that maybe isn't as broad in terms of what it's trying to bring in. You may end up in a situation where students are ill prepared, less well prepared to be in that academic environment, and they're not going to succeed. But with that English language proficiency keyring, you can hook on a whole degree, you can hook on a series of micro credentials, professional qualifications. You've got access to as much as you want, and you keep it with you for your whole life. You have it, and it's with you. And as part of PeopleCert, we're able to package these things up in a way that I think is, transformational, actually. And when you say why another English language test, it's why another English language test that actually could do all these things and open this door to so many different professional opportunities, academic opportunities, but with an eye on how you do all of that and stay sane and look after yourself. And I think those skills at that heart are where there's something really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have got time for just one question from our audience. So you've been talking about future proofing, and it's really fascinating, and I can't even begin to comprehend how you think of it.
It's nuts because you can't say, if you were doing a history qualification, in 2 years' time, well, we're just going to hop in our time machine and go back and talk to Oliver Cromwell.
Of course.
So it can't be some sort of imagined future, and it can't be an outdated past. So dealing with content, tech is moving so fast. You can quite quickly actually end up with some references like, my new portable phone.
Exactly.
Gone.
How do you, briefly, because I imagine it's a very complicated answer, but how do you factor in things like AI?
It's a huge program of stakeholder engagement. So part of the job that I absolutely love is speaking to all our different stakeholders. Student voice, super important. Cannot say how important the student voice is. We have different ways of engaging with our stakeholders. So we have an academic panel who are directly advising what's going on in academia with one eye on, what's happening in the future. We work with employers. We work with all our different stakeholders to try and really understand what that picture, I hate the sort of landscape, but what is that picture, and we need it in as HD as possible, to use a probably already dated tech term, but we need to understand that picture as much as possible in order to be able to think about direction and where things may be headed. So that example I gave you about speaking and the rise in oracy and having, at the time of starting the test development, it's like, come on, we can get AI to do these, conduct these tests. That would be, that is one approach. But I think the way that our speaking test has been designed is now so relevant to impact and opportunity for young people now, because it's tapping into things that, your example was AI. The skills for humanity are essential to be able to use the AI responsibly and ethically. So it's human in the loop.
Human in the loop. I love that.
And the other one we have is people in PeopleCert. So true. AI is not going to replace people. It's just data and information.
I am inclined to agree with you. I think we probably all hope that you're very right on that. Absolutely fascinating. And I think we're going to have to end it there now. But that was such a brilliant chat. Thank you so much, Kathy. We have, for anyone tuning in, we have recorded this. You will all be sent a recording of this. But just all it is left for me to say is thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you for your time. I've really, really enjoyed today.
Thanks, Beth. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining in with this Pi Chat Live, and we will see you next time.